The RNG Dilemma. Oh, Jesus. I don't know if I want to talk about this either because we're early enough where it's almost, I don't know. Okay, so should snipers hit each other when they fire 100% of the time? Yes. Yes, they should. Randomly missing is totally unforgivable if that's still a thing. I know this is a very old Co-1 shot, but it's relevant. You know, if a pack or an AT gun is at near point blank range and a tank's at near death, should it connect with that tank? If the tank isn't doing anything crazy, or there's no abilities active, no smoke, all that shit, should it connect? I think yes. The key to RNG and Company Heroes 3 is going to be a balance. I went at great lengths to make it clear that removing RNG from Co would be a giant mistake. And even in games like StarCraft 1 have some RNG, Co has a lot more, but the goal here is to remove as much unreasonable, over-impactful, low-chance randomness as possible. RNG, for example, is like an elevation. RNG is things like scarabs, whether or not they detonate. I watch a lot of StarCraft 1 competitive. StarCraft absolutely has RNG. There's also spawning points. So if you have 4-player maps, a lot of those are competitive for 1v1. Where you spawn makes a giant difference. The base that you spawn in. There's plenty of RNG in StarCraft 1. You have things like... it goes on and on. In any case, Company of Heroes has a lot more RNG than StarCraft does. And it's actually okay if some of it's curtailed. Things like if you're at point blank with an AT gun and there's nothing that would interfere with it under normal conditions, like this graphic you're seeing here. This AT gun in this case is well under its 50% range, and it misses. If you watch the rest of the clip, the tank kills the AT gun, gets away, and the guy with the tank wins the game. That's not surprising. These kinds of things, if they want this game to be good, they need to be very careful about what they do. I'm going to give an example here. I gave this example here. A guy named Huck, who used to play with the Reborn guys a lot. He was in Reborn back in the day. He's one of the best StarCraft 2 players in the country. I'm in the United States right now. If he's playing a game for $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 for the winner, okay? And you get to something like Game 5, and you have a situation like this, where in this example, the AT player identifies the fact that T-3485 is weak and vulnerable, and the other guy's not microing his tank. And the AT gun player correctly identifies this, correctly moves the AT gun into position, correctly sets it up, and fires at close range to maximize his chances of accuracy, and it misses. You're telling the player as the developer, you did everything right. But okay? This happens an unacceptable number of times, and everyone here who's played on ladder knows exactly what that feels like. And I don't mean when the player makes the mistake, but they feel like they got screwed over, right? Because that's a real thing, like internal bias. I'm talking about things that are real from an objective, not a subjective stance. This graphic illustrates my point beautifully. And you can't have a competitive environment where this is okay. You also are going to drive players away if this is okay. Players that don't know anything about this game but do everything right in the right order as you instruct them through the campaign and through tutorials, and then you f them over because of the way some of this over-impactful, low chance randomness is, that will stymie this game in ways that are not okay. So I'm actually glad we talked about this because it's super important that Relic looks at this and thinks about ways to mitigate this stuff. So if players do the right things in the right orders, they get the payoff. You're supposed to get this AT gun player is supposed to get the satisfaction of destroying that tank because he did everything right. The other player did everything wrong, and the guy who did everything wrong ends up winning this game. That's not going to happen for high stakes. People are not going to play for $100,000 if that's part of the game. They won't. And I went through Huck. I basically asked him if this situation, that AT gun situation, I explained it to him. And I'm like, what do you think about that? He said, for argument's sake, I think chancing games is good, but obviously to the degree they have it is bad. Your example being good, the AT gun there. There are not a lot of guys that have as much experience in competitive gaming as guys like the StarCraft 1 and 2 environment. So that's kind of important to highlight there. I also go into potential solutions. How would you solve the RNG dilemma? There's probably 100 ways to do this. I almost don't want to go over them because we're going to be here all goddamn day. But the crux of this is if it stays the way it is with some of the unreasonable low chance RNG, it's a problem. So, and again, someone just said that it's not the same. It doesn't function as poker. It's more like roulette. That's true, and that's okay in a casual environment. It's okay if you're in a campaign and things are like that. It's okay that you're playing a casual game with your buddies. It's okay if you're in a co-op campaign. It's okay if it's a mod. That's fine. I've heard people talk about this, and they're talking about the ladder, and they're like, well, that's okay. But I'm like, you don't understand. This is the ladder. This is a competitive environment. We're playing for money, and that stuff breaks that. It's AE said this. I'm going to quote him. It's a game-breaking experience. So please, Relic, if you're watching or if you ever hear this, please look very closely at the unreasonable, over-impactful RNG.